You're watching the Money Down presented by BetPrep. I'm Tamara Brown, joined alongside Kyle Craft and Joe Marino, ready to get you all ready for today's college slate of games, at least the betting angle side. Let's get this party started, guys. We're starting off, obviously, with a top 25 matchup in Kentucky and UGA. Joe, I'm going to get started with you first. What do you got?
Yeah, this is an interesting football game, and it seems like the handicappers have given Georgia a lot of credit in a game with two undefeated teams in the SEC East. I'm guessing the winner of this game plays for the SEC championship game. But what I like in this game from a betting angle is Kentucky plus 13.5 when it comes to the first half spread. I'm expecting a slugfest in this football game, a ton of rushing attempts by both teams. Both teams have great defenses, and I'm not expecting a lot of scoring. And so if Georgia pulls away in this game, which I think will eventually happen, I think it happens in the second half. Kentucky has a good enough defense, a good enough rushing attack, and a little bit of firepower in the passing game with wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson to keep this thing close, at least early. In my mind, Georgia has some injuries on defense. Stetson Bennett continues to be the quarterback most likely this week for Georgia. And so for all those reasons working together, I think Kentucky can keep it reasonably close in the first 30 minutes of the game. And so keep it within 2 touchdowns, and we'll collect our money on this one.
All right, Kyle. Joe's saying it's going to be reasonably close in the first half. What do you got for this top 25 undefeated matchup in the SEC?
I'm going to say it's going to be reasonably close for 60 minutes. If you're giving me more than 3 touchdowns, plus 21.5 Kentucky is what I am going to take in this contest. I also considered the under at 44.5 given the pace of play of these two teams being 115th and 116th in the country in plays per minute. But that doesn't leave you a lot of margin for error for special teams or explosive plays or turnovers on short fields. Given the rushing success of both teams, I do think possessions are going to be at a premium, which makes it hard for me to believe that a rush defense, as good as Kentucky's has shown themselves to be this season, is going to be 4 possessions worse than Georgia throughout the course of the game. Both of these offenses are in the top 30 nationally in big play rate, so there is a fair ability to see evening out of chunk plays, and seeing Kentucky get enough points on the board to kind of hang in there within the 3 touchdown margin that we need to cover. Most importantly, Kentucky is ranked number 4 in the country in finishing drives. Georgia's 44th. So that's an advantage that they're going to have to potentially, if Georgia kicks a couple field goals, Kentucky puts 1 in the end zone, that exchange is going to favor Kentucky. Give me Kentucky plus 21.5.
Kyle, you mentioned advantage, and I'd love to know who you have having the advantage in this matchup between Oklahoma State and Texas. Texas obviously coming off that devastating loss to OU, and Oklahoma State, one of very few remaining undefeated FBS teams so far this year in the Power 5. What do you have?
Yeah, so this one is tough, and as far as who has the advantage, I don't really know, and that's why I'm not going to go with the spread. I'm going to go with the over on 60.5 points. I feel like every week I come on here and I bet the over on a Texas game. But to be fair, Texas is averaging 50 points per game over 3 conference games this season. And Oklahoma State does not consistently tackle particularly well. They're outside the top 100 in tackling in the country. Steve Sarkisian getting his Longhorns at home after the rough loss last week to Oklahoma, I think should help kind of ease that heartbreak that they're getting over in the loss to Oklahoma. Big 12 conference championship game is still on the table for them. But Texas has also played defensively. They're 117th in success against the pass, 112th in finishing drives, 93rd in pass rush, and 94th in rush yards. Oklahoma State can score, but so can Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. So that's why I'm taking the over.
Joe, basically Kyle's expecting a lot of points in this one. Are you going with Texas? Are you going with Oklahoma State? Or are you just staying away from it altogether?
No, I like Texas to win and cover in this football game. Like Kyle said, Texas is going to score some points in this one, and I think he's got a good bet there himself for the over to hit. I mean, he mentioned Texas and scoring, averaging over 50 points per game over the last 3 games, all against Big 12 foes in Oklahoma, TCU, and Texas Tech. And Oklahoma State has received a lot of praise for their defense and how it's performing, but I honestly don't care. I don't think they've seen an offense anything like Texas to this point. And where I get concerned about Oklahoma State in this football game is I don't believe they have the offensive firepower necessary to keep pace with an offense like Texas. So I think Texas pours it on at home against Oklahoma State in a bounce-back game after that heartbreaking loss to Oklahoma.
Joe, does IU have what it takes to keep up with undefeated Michigan State this weekend? Obviously, IU won last year, but this is a different Sparty team this year.
Well, so if we're going to Michigan State and Indiana, are we going to go with Florida and LSU as our next one here?
Let's go with Florida LSU, actually.
All right. Florida LSU.
SEC
All right.
Just means more down there in the Southeast.
Let's just do it.
It just means more, so let's bump it up. Florida LSU. This was the game that gave me the most, kind of had me in a tailspin a little bit with the different directions you can go. But what I settled on is the over. I think that these two teams can combine to hit the over, which is set at 59.5 points. And like I said, this game's tough, but what I like are the offenses in this game. And LSU's defense has really, really struggled. They have tons of injuries. Key players like Ali Gay and Glenn Logan up front. Andre Anthony, another defensive lineman, two of their starting corners, and Derek Stingley and Eli Ricks will not be available for this football game. And so, I think Florida can score, and they run the football very, very well. LSU's defense has been suspect, stopping the run, and I expect that will continue again today. So the script that I see is Florida scoring plenty of points and LSU having to be in chase mode, and that kind of creates a lot of urgency for them to score. And let's face it, LSU has a decent passing attack, and Florida's secondary has shown a lot of vulnerability in recent weeks. Kyer Elam, their star cornerback, may not play. And so the thing that I feel best about in this football game is points. And so give me the over in Florida and LSU.
All right, Kyle. Joe's pretty confident only in the fact that a lot of points are going to be scored here. What are you confident in when you look at this SEC matchup between LSU and Florida?
What I am confident in is that the LSU Tigers are in shambles. That's what I am confident in. Joe kind of stole a little bit of my thunder talking about Derek Stingley being out, Eli Ricks being out, Ali Gay being out, Major Burns being out, Glenn Logan being out, John Emery, the running back, being out. Keishawn Butte is out of this football game. They can't run the ball, and now they've lost their best wide receiver. Yikes. And for that reason, I'm taking Florida minus 12.5, getting nearly 2 touchdowns in Death Valley. Understand there's a home field advantage here. We're already talking about Ed Odron potentially not surviving the weekend. And it feels like if we're at that point, this thing's that far gone, there's this many injuries. I don't like that recipe. And the Gators, they can pound the rock. They can run the football. They get after opposing quarterbacks really, really well with Brent Cox and Zachary Carter and all the other guys that they have in that front. So all of that adds up to me to liking the Gators big today against LSU.
All right, Joe, I jumped the gun and went Michigan IU early, but now it's actually time for Michigan State IU this time. Obviously, Michigan State 6-0. Does IU have what it takes to keep up with this Sparty team?
I don't think so. I like Michigan State -4 in this football game. The Spartans are hot. They're scoring a ton of points. They're limiting points and playing very inspired football. And to me, Indiana has been a big-time disappointment this year. I mean, congratulations on beating Western Kentucky and Idaho, but they have flopped in the big games that they've had so far this year. They lost 24-0 to Penn State last week, or in their last game. Cincy beat them 38-24. They lost to Iowa 34-6. I mean, these games against top opponents have not been close. They're not scoring points against good teams. And Michigan State is holding Power 5 foes to 16 points per game so far this year. And so I don't think that Indiana's going to be able to score, and I don't think they're going to be able to keep pace with this Spartans rushing attack led by Kenneth Walker II. I think he'll stay hot in this football game. And so I'm fine laying the 4.5 on the road. Michigan State, in my mind, gets to 7-0 today, and they cover the spread.
Kyle, I would love to see if you are actually going to agree with Joe and go with Sparty, or if this is going to be a hot take and you're going to go with IU.
Well, I keep waiting for Joe to stop stealing my talking points. It's talking about the Indiana football program, and it still feels like they're getting handicapped like it's 2020, and they were a successful team in 2020. It ain't 2020. And as Joe said, their most quality win was a 2-point win over Western Kentucky. Meanwhile, Michigan State goes down to South Florida, noon kick. They beat the pants off of the Miami Hurricanes program. They had a tough home battle against Nebraska, who's suddenly a very game franchise or program. And you're seeing Kenneth Walker, who Joe mentioned, but Jalen Naylor, the wide receiver, had 3 touchdowns and 200 yards last week as the Draft Network's Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week. And he had that at halftime. So this Michigan State team, I think, can score points. I have no trust whatsoever. My only concern in this football game is that the next team on Michigan State's schedule is Michigan. Now, they do have a bye between now and then, so I don't think it's going to be too much of a letdown recipe, but that is something I would be mindful of if I'm the Spartans, to make sure I'm focused on the task at hand today. But I am taking Michigan State -4 as well alongside Joe.
Ooh, well, I look forward to seeing what you guys have for Michigan State in 2 weeks when Sparty comes off the bye. But Kyle, I'm going to start with you because you said that Joe keeps stealing your thunder. We're going to the ACC with Pitt and Virginia Tech. Obviously, Pitt has been putting up big points consistently, while, as Joe mentioned last week, Virginia Tech can barely score and get over 20 points. So, Kyle, what are you leaning towards in this one?
Well, as you can see here on the game trends, Pittsburgh is 6-1 against the spread against Virginia Tech in their last 7 matchups. You can make it 7 out of 8 for me. I'm taking Pitt -5. I understand this is in Blacksburg, but Virginia Tech has made the list for me. After I took them in the pick'em last week against Notre Dame, they're up 8 points with 3 minutes left, somehow lose the game in regulation. It hurt my heart, but that's not the only reason I'm picking Pitt here. These teams are moving in opposite directions. Pitt, they've gone over in all their games thus far this season. They're scoring a ton of points. Tech is 1-3 since they upset the Tar Heels to open the year. You could take your pick of metrics on both sides of the football. There's a really, really good chance Pitt measures as a better football team in pretty much any metric that you want to look at versus Virginia Tech. Tech allows big plays. Pitt is in the top 10 in producing them. Pitt is a top team defending the run. Virginia Tech can't run the football. They're bottom 15 in the country. The QB run with Burmeister is the big wild card here, but he was banged up at the end of that Notre Dame game last week, so it's even hard to say with any level of confidence that he's going to be 100% willing to run and take hits the way that he usually does. Fade the Hokies, the renowned choke artist. Give me Pitt -5.
Wow. Have my heart ripped out of my chest for that one. But Joe, it's your turn. I already know because I've seen the graphic that you are agreeing with Kyle on this one. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I'm definitely agreeing with Kyle on this one. Give me Pitt -5. I mean, Pitt's averaging 52.4 points per game. And I know that Virginia Tech is capable of some stingy defense, but they haven't seen a passing attack like what Pitt has with Kenny Pickett. And Pickett is the hottest quarterback in college football, completing 72% of his passes, 19 touchdowns, just 1 interception. And Notre Dame, they exposed some vulnerability in the Tech defense late in the game last week. And the Hokies are coming off of the bye, and that should be a real big advantage. Excuse me, the Panthers. Pittsburgh's coming off the bye. That should be a big advantage for them this week. Pitt has a very stingy defense, and I don't think it's enough credit. And they have NFL talent at every single level. And so, when you kind of think about all the dynamics of this game and you look at this Virginia Tech offense, it's not been impressive, and they really haven't faced any good defenses yet this year. They're only averaging 25 points per game and 330 total yards. I think Pitt wins this game convincingly, even though it's on the road.
I'll definitely be following up with you guys after this game just to see if you guys are right. But cool. Auburn, Arkansas, we're back in the SEC. Kyle, I'm going to go with you again because you keep saying that Joe steals the thunder. So I'm going to give you your chance to have the floor first. Are the Razorbacks going to bounce back from back-to-back weeks of losses, or are you going with Auburn here?
Yeah, so I think Arkansas is still a very, very good football team. And they had hard luck over the last week, obviously, with the missed 2-point conversion to win the game. But also last year, I don't know if you guys remember, this was the game where Bo Nix went to spike the ball, and he spiked it backwards, and they called it grounding instead of a fumble, and it ended up stopping the clock or whatever and allowing Auburn to kick a game-winning field goal in a game that Arkansas should have won. So Arkansas has that on their mind. They're coming off 2 losses. I still think this is a good football team. But here's the problem. I have no idea with the spread or if Arkansas can stop the bleeding. So I'm going to go ahead and take the over on 54 points in this. Auburn plays very, very fast. Meanwhile, Arkansas can run the ball. They've got quarterback run dynamic as well. Treylon Burks has been unstoppable. I think this is a relatively modest line. And if you tell me somebody's going to score 27 versus 28, I'm going to hit the over. I'm going to take that in this football game. I'm expecting points. Would not be surprised if Arkansas does win and win by the needed 4.5 to cover. But just to play it safe, I feel better about the over in this contest.
Joe, are you playing it safe in this Auburn-Arkansas matchup? I have a feeling that you can't agree with Kyle on everything. It's just very, normal that you're going to go against him.
Well, I agree with Kyle in that I don't like the spread in this game and I want to stay away. But where I disagree with Kyle is on the scoring. I like the under in this football game. Both teams are coming off losses where the defenses underperformed. I mean, Arkansas gave up 52 to Ole Miss. Auburn surrendered 34 to Georgia. Both teams like to run the football, and I expect that to be a point of emphasis for both teams. Now, in order for the over to hit, we need both offenses to challenge for 30 points, and we just haven't seen that from either team against Power 5 competition. Auburn against Power 5 foes, they're only averaging 18 points per game. Now, Arkansas is averaging 28 against Power 5 foes, but that is
Arkansas
inflated.
Scored 51 last week.
But that is inflated.
They scored 51 last week.
Yeah, inflated by scoring 51 against a soft butter defense in Ole Miss.
Wow.
So we need 8.5 more points per game than the team's average for the over to hit. I like the under in a game where I expect both defenses to play inspired in a bounce-back game against offenses that like to run the football.
I hope that you two are live tweeting this game because this banter back and forth during this has been 10 out of 10. So I will definitely be checking in to see what happens between Auburn and Arkansas. We are going back to the ACC. Again, this one's actually in my backyard today. Okay. NC State, BC. Obviously, BC hasn't beaten a top 25 team since 2014, but both teams are 4-1. Joe, ACC guy, I am going to start with you first.
Yeah, I like Boston College in this game, +3. I'm getting points. So, both teams here 4-1, coming off bye weeks. Both teams have really good defenses. And so I think that it's kind of a push there when you go to the defense. What I like, where I think Boston College has the advantage is not only are they at home, but they have a better offense in my mind. And they have a really outstanding offensive line. They have a big play receiver in Zay Flowers. And I know that Phil Dracovic at quarterback is injured, but Dennis Grossell, he's been pretty sound filling in for him. And so I get the Eagles at home. I get points. I have a better offense, comparable defenses. I really, really like this BC coaching staff. I like BC at home with the points.
Kyle, did you lean on Joe for this ACC head-to-head matchup today in Boston?
Well, I called my good buddy Joe last night and said, hey, what can you tell me about this contest? And he told me BC's got a chance to win the game outright. So I'm taking Boston College +3 as well. He made the point about Zay Flowers and being at home. And I like those dynamics when you compare these two teams, and they both have good offensive lines. They do have good rushing attacks. Zay Flowers is an added weapon for Boston College. I think adds a little extra dynamic. And NC State has not fared well against the spread in Chestnut Hill. I believe they're 1-8 against the spread in their last, or 1-7 against the spread in their last 8 in Chestnut Hill. And I know that's different year, different team, different dynamic. But as Joe mentioned, BC, they all rest. They're at home. Give me Boston College +3, and potentially might actually have a bet filed, not for the card here, but on my personal card for the money line for Boston College.
All right, we're going back to the SEC, Ole Miss, Tennessee. Kyle, we're going to start with you first for this one. Obviously, they're both in the SEC, but these two teams haven't actually crossed divisions and played each other since 2014. I'd love to hear your insight for this one, starting with you, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't start with renowned Ole Miss hater Joe Marino on this game. Listen, the over-under is 82.5 points. You have to take the under just off of principle. That is a massive number. So give me the under on 82.5. For what it's worth, the only times this season that Ole Miss or Tennessee have respectively passed 82 points this year was last week for Ole Miss against Arkansas, and Tennessee had 86 combined points in a win over Missouri. There will be points, but 82 plus, I don't know. And I'm also unsure about Tennessee's legitimacy. They've played well in recent weeks. They've scored a lot of points, but they scored 14 against Florida, and they lucked their way into 34 points against Pitt. They got 14 points on a blocked punt that was recovered at the 2-yard line and a 44-yard catch and run that just had one terrible tackle attempt on the perimeter. So against the better teams, Tennessee has not been able to light up the scoreboard like they have the last couple of weeks. So give me the under in this contest.
All right, Joe, obviously Kyle called you out there, but now the floor is yours. What do you have for this Ole Miss Tennessee matchup?
Yeah, I see the same thing Kyle does, is that 82.5 points is just too much. So give me the under here.
That was a bad defense in Ole Miss. What happened?
Well, it's about not believing in Tennessee for them to be able to score, kind of like you outlined there. So good analysis there, Kyle. It's just too many points to bet on it happening. And when you think about what's required for two teams to score 83 points, we're not having much margin for error in terms of turnovers or not ending drives and touchdowns. So for me, I'll just count on enough variance to keep this thing under 83 points. I think the better defense and the worse offense is at home, and I think that helps keep it under 83 points. I mean, Alabama and Ole Miss combined for 62, and the over-under for that game was 80. I don't see these two teams combining for more points than that.
Purdue, Iowa, last but certainly not least. Iowa obviously coming off that big win against Penn State, but Purdue has beaten this Iowa team 3 of the last 4 meetings. Kyle, is Purdue going to spoil Iowa's winning streak, or is Iowa going to keep rolling?
Well, Tamara, now it's your turn to start stealing my talking points. Jeff Brom, Purdue Boilermakers, is 3-1 against Iowa during his tenure as the head coach, which I think is really interesting. And for all the talk about the Iowa defense, it is the Purdue Boilermakers who are currently the #1 passing defense in the Big Ten. And they've played Notre Dame, Minnesota, and Oregon State as a couple of quality passing attacks. Purdue is also allowing less than 15.5 points per game, nearly equal to Iowa's 13 points allowed per game. Iowa's getting less than 320 yards of offense per game thus far this season. The big question is whether or not Iowa is going to have some turnovers, set themselves up on some short field, and steal some points that way. But give me the under on 43 in this contest, as these are 2 of the top 3 scoring defenses and pass defenses in the Big Ten. I also like Purdue getting 11.5 points today and would consider them on upset watch because of what Tamara mentioned. Jeff Brom is 3-1 against the Hawkeyes.
Joe, I would love to see where you stand with this game. Is Purdue capable of getting the upset, or is Iowa going to keep rolling, or are you going to just stay away from going with either team here?
Yeah, I can definitely see Purdue winning this football game, but I'm in direct conflict with Kyle again here. I'm going over on the points. Iowa doesn't have an explosive offense. They don't have a ton of yards, but they can score. They're averaging 31.5 points per game on the season, and whether it's scoring on defense or setting their offense up for short fields, I mean, they have scored all year long. Purdue coming off of the bye, they have playmakers on offense. David Bell, an outstanding wide receiver for them. And this game has went over 43. Purdue and Iowa, they've went over 43 points in each of the last 3 meetings and 4 of the last 5. Like you guys have already established, Purdue has given Iowa trouble, winning 3 of the last 4 in this series. And so I think there will be urgency on both sides. That means points, and honestly, we don't need that many of them for the over to hit.
All right, that's it for the first slate of games that Kyle and Joe were able to talk about today. After the break, we'll be back with Patrick Everson from Props.com with the BetPrep breakdown.
Hey everybody, I'm Drake Harris here to show you all 32 picks in my latest mock draft. I've got a few picks that may surprise you, either the quarterbacks, may even have a surprise wide receiver for you in the first round. So let's get into it. watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you like the pick I made for your team.
You can be a
Props.com after hearing you two talk about this week's slate of games. But Patrick, let's get going. What are the books looking like for this big top 25 SEC matchup between Kentucky and UGA?
This is pretty interesting, and it's pretty much across the board. Just about every book I've talked to is seeing, more money and more tickets on the big underdog Kentucky. And even though early in the week this number got out to as high as 24 at some spots on Georgia, it's down to pretty much a consensus 21.5 Georgia. At BetMGM Nevada, I was talking with Scott Shelton about this game. It was 2-1 tickets and money on Kentucky. Sharp money, Kentucky plus 24. And he also noted, he said the public is definitely behind Kentucky on this. And he noted that Kentucky's even taking more parlay tickets and more parlay money, which is a little bit unusual. Wow. Usually the people pile on the favorite if they're not going to do the straight bet thing. They're going to include a team like Georgia in all their parlays. So a pretty interesting dynamic shaping up in that one. It remains to be seen whether they're actually going to need Georgia. I'm going to be kind of surprised if they do come kickoff. We still got a little ways to go here, but that could be the case.
How's the money tracking for Oklahoma State versus Texas?
BetMGM Nevada, it's money is really close, literally within a few dollars. But tickets 2-1 in favor of the Longhorns. Longhorns seeing a little more action there, and the movement was interesting too. Longhorns from 5 to 6, and now all the way down to 3.5. And Scott Shelton, again, BetMGM Nevada, said it was sharp play. Oklahoma State from +6 all the way down. Said they're also playing the over on tickets and money. They were at 60 most of the week. Finally went up to 61 this morning at BetMGM's books up and down Las Vegas Boulevard.
Patrick, we've got another SEC matchup for you. This one with Florida and LSU. Are there any trends for this SEC matchup?
Well, it's Florida trending up, initially -10 to -9 at BetMGM Nevada, then all the way up to 12.5. And it was they're on the Gators in this one for sure. Florida money is almost 10-1 at BetMGM Nevada. Tickets 4-1, so definitely getting some public backing as well. But at some of the lower numbers, there was some sharp action on the Gators too. Florida -10, -11. Scott said saw some of the professional players getting involved. So as Scott's told me many times, whenever the sharps and professionals are on the same side, it's never a good sign for the book. We'll see how that works out for the bettors later on today.
How are things looking out west for Arizona State and Utah?
Yeah, this has been a little back and forth. A late game tonight. I think this is Pac-12 After Dark, the real late one. One of those get even deeper games, as Jay Rude likes to call them, where you're chasing or hoping to break even or whatever. Jay Rude has that's a great line for that. It's the get even or get even deeper game. Usually that's the Hawaii game, but it might be this one tonight. Opens ASU 1, gets to 2, goes down to pick. Again, Scott Shelton, BetMGM Nevada, said tickets 1.5 to 1 in favor of Arizona State, but money 2-1 in favor of Utah. And he didn't note this, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there was a little bit of professional play that helped bring that number to pick from Arizona State -2.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for letting us know what's happening in the books for this week's slate of college games. That's Patrick Everson from Props.com. When we get back from this break, we'll take a look at the leaderboard, and Kyle and Joe will do their go for 2 picks and their bold bets.
You can be a phenomenal thrower of the ball, but if you can't execute your offense, that complicates things.
Paige DeMacos here with Kyle Krabs to talk about one of the more strange situations in the draft community that I can remember. And Kyle, that is the one Spencer Rattler, quarterback, or should I say former starting quarterback of the Oklahoma Sooners. This was the second time around we've seen him benched in a Texas game, right? This happened last year, but this time around it was different, right? He didn't go back in. This was the Williams show. This was the new kid. We knew that he was sitting there behind the scenes, and this was obviously a game that if you want to stay in title contention, you have to have. So talk to me with the draft lens. How strange is this, and how hard is your job now to evaluate Spencer from a prospect perspective?
Yeah, I think there's an execution issue here at Oklahoma, and you obviously see a catalyst with a new quarterback that comes in Caleb Williams and how effective he was. The only other time we saw Spencer throughout the end of that game was to run the 2-point conversion flat play, and those are generally considered to be specials, right? So with your install, Caleb Williams is the backup quarterback. He's not getting those reps. So that probably had a lot to do with why we saw Spencer get back in for that one play. But you're going to have a real hard time. And the more people that we've talked to, and we knew this coming into the season as well, but the more people that we talked to, it's like where the media was at in general with Spencer Rattler didn't really align with where a lot of people throughout the league considered Spencer Rattler to be. And now you're kind of seeing that jump, that projection that we were willing to bank on because he's such a gifted thrower of the football hasn't really materialized. You can be a phenomenal thrower of the ball, but if you can't execute your offense, that complicates things. And we've seen that now at Oklahoma with the change that's been made here. So if we don't see Spencer Rattler back in the starting position for the rest of the year, and I'm inclined to think that we probably don't, and the leash is going to be super short from here, and with how much of a run that Caleb Williams put this offense on, I don't know where and how you can possibly have a high evaluation or projection on Spencer Rattler.
We're back on the Money Down presented by BetPrep, getting ready to do our Go for Two picks and our bold bets. But before we do that, let's take a look at the leaderboard to see how Kyle and Joe did last week. We've heard throughout the show that, Kyle got burned a few times last week, but let's see how everything shook out.
Ooh.
Thanks a lot, Hokies.
Okay, it wasn't just the
BYU.
Hokies, it was BYU too. It was BYU too.
Well, yeah, I'd have been fine if I didn't put 3 units on BYU, but I also watched 2 late games unfold and just fall apart in the final minutes. The under in the Kentucky LSU game and simultaneously Notre Dame, Virginia Tech falling apart within about 5 minutes of each other was a real rough 7 o'clock slate to finish last week's games for me.
Well, I'm hoping, Kyle, that you can bounce back today and start a new streak for your graphic picks. And so with that, I am going to start with you first. For your first Go for Two pick, what do you have?
So my first Go for Two is Virginia laying the points against Duke. I am going to take a little bit of the cowardly way out. I did buy this line down to 9.5. And I'm going to kick myself because I've bought lines down over the last 3 weeks and not needed to do it in every instance. But this is a Go for Two. So I want to have the peace of mind to know that if it is a 10-point margin with Virginia at home against Duke, at the end of the day, it's going to take care of business. There's going to be points. This total is set at nearly 70. That's a hard sell for me. But the Cavs, they're going to jump on Duke early, I think, at home. Duke's best offensive trait is running the football. If Virginia can score some points early and they can get Duke out of that run the football approach, this could be a really rough showing for Duke. And I look no further than when Duke played against North Carolina. They scored 7 points in their last road game when they went to Chapel Hill and played Tar Heels. Virginia scored 39 against the same defense in the same conditions just a few weeks prior. So I think that's a nice litmus test for where each one of these teams are. Virginia can pass the football. I think they can put a lot of pressure on Duke. Virginia -9 adjusted line. 9.5.
Kyle, did you get any insight from Joe on this Go for Two pick?
None. This is all me. So I can't blame him if it goes wrong, and I can't thank him if it goes right.
Joe, all right, he's going with one of your ACC teams for his go for two pick. You actually had an ACC team in your go for two pick last week, but we're not going to talk about that because you can, hopefully bounce back this week. What do you have for your go for two pick?
Yeah, my first one, I want to go to the Pac-12, Arizona State and Utah. I like Arizona State on the money line in this football game. The Sun Devils are hot, 3 straight 3-score wins over Pac-12 foes, and they have a very legitimate defense. They're holding opponents under 300 yards per game and 16 points per game. And as a team, I just feel like they're finding consistency. Meanwhile, Utah has been a very vulnerable team so far this year. And so the overall balance that a team like Arizona State features, Jaden Daniels, their quarterback, I feel like he's playing his best football right now and hitting his stride.
Mm-hmm.
He's a dual threat guy. He's taking care of the football. And so I went in on Arizona State against UCLA. They didn't let me down. So I'm going back to the well for the Sun Devils to take care of business against Utah today.
I'm really interested if Chris had anything to do with this go for two pick.
Forks,
for you,
is
Joe.
it forks up or how does it go? Yeah. You're welcome, Chris. Go Sun Devils.
Chris is somewhere watching it. I'm sure he's super excited.
There it is.
It's not Hook'em. No. It's,
oh my god!
I don't know. I know NC State, right?
Pretend fan.
There we go.
He's pretend fan.
Okay, yeah. For
a
sure.
pretend fan. Chris is definitely really excited somewhere watching this right now. Kyle, it's your turn now for your second go for two pick. And I'm really excited to see where you are going with this one.
Yeah, so first thing I need to do is apologize to the fine folks of Piscataway, New Jersey, because last week I faded Rutgers against Michigan State. It worked out well. Michigan State took care of business. They won big. But I mispronounced Piscataway because if you go back and you check the tape, there was a fly that landed directly on my nose as I was trying to say the name of the town. So in order to make myself up for the fine folks around Rutgers University, I'm taking them on the money line against Northwestern this weekend on the road. So Rutgers will be on the road against Northwestern, looking to get back to their winning ways. They started the season 3-0. That 3-0 start has dissipated. They've lost 3 straight against Michigan. They lost 20-13. Ohio State, they lost 52-13. And Michigan State, they lost 31-13 in succession. But here's the good news. Northwestern is much closer to the temple of the worlds than they are the Michigans and Michigan States, which is one of the teams that Rutgers beat earlier this season. The Wildcats are coming off a bye, but their only 2 wins this season have come against Ohio and Indiana State. Greg Schiano has this program building some momentum, and I think they're going to stop this 3-game skid today, and they're going to take care of business on the road against the Wildcats.
And this is your graphic pick, right, Kyle?
It is.
Or
yes.
is that
your...
So, okay.
No, we're all in on Rutgers. It's my amends for last week's mispronunciation.
I'm sure they greatly appreciate that. Joe, it's time for your final go for two pick for today. What do you got?
Yeah, I want to go to that Duke-Virginia game, and what I like in this contest is the under. I think under 70 is the way to go for Duke and Virginia. And I know Virginia has an explosive offense and a bad defense, but I just do not trust Duke to do its job for the over to hit in this football game. Duke is not explosive in the passing game, and the best thing they do is run the football with Mateo Durant. Now, when I look at some of the games that Virginia has played this year, Louisville, which is a much better offense than Duke, Louisville and Virginia, they combined for 67. Miami and Virginia combined for 58. Wake and Virginia combined for 54. So why on earth is Duke and Virginia going to be the highest scoring game that Virginia's played so far against some of these other comparable offenses and score more than 70? I just don't think the Blue Devils do their job for the over to hit. So give me the under on my second go for two pick here in this Duke and Virginia game.
I expected nothing less from you, Joe, than to have an ACC team for your go for two pick. I'm interested to see where you stand for your bold bet. Joe, I'm going to start with you here.
Yeah, so I want to go to the Pac-12 again, not necessarily familiar territory, but I'm doing well with Pac-12 bets this year. And so UCLA and Washington. I like UCLA in the money line in this football game. I like UCLA's offense, and I hate Washington's offense. I think the Bruins can control this game with their rushing attack. Washington's offense is conservative with no big play potential. I mean, the Huskies lost to Oregon State in their last game. They needed overtime to beat Cal. And so give me the road underdog in UCLA to win this football game outright today.
Kyle, Joe is big on the Pac-12. He had them in his go for 2 pick. Now he went with it in his bold bet. What's your bold bet for this week, Kyle?
I'm also taking the UCLA money line.
Oh,
So-
let's go.
Wow.
So when I called Joe last night and I was like, tell me what I need to know about NC State versus BC. And we kind of go through the game. And then I'm scrolling through and I'm like, yo, have you seen the UCLA Washington line? Washington's favored by 1.5. And he goes, yeah, I'm on that one. And I knew I was going to be on it too when I first saw it before I said anything to him. So I agree with everything Joe said. I am stunned that Washington is a betting favorite in this football game. I'm sure they know something that I don't. But in the meantime, you can put me down on the UCLA money line alongside Joe as our bold bit, an underdog to win outright. I like the Bruins today.
You said you were stunned that everyone was going with Washington. I'm stunned that you two are on the same page to end the show with your bold bets. I am definitely going to be tuning back into this one as well as the other few that you guys seem to be disagreeing on. I'm just, wow, blown away that you guys agreed. I love it. This is the first. This goes down in history this week. Thank you so much for tuning in for this week's edition of The Money Down presented by BetPrep. We'll be back tomorrow with the we'll be back tomorrow with the NFL edition of The Money Down presented by BetPrep. This was the college edition, obviously, with Joe Marino, Kyle Krabs, and Tamara Brown. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show.